Binge eaters often want to understand why they binge, and that would make a lot of sense because surely if you can understand why you binge, then you've got some kind of chance of being able to figure out a solution. Unfortunately, what we find in practice is that analyzing binge eating behavior and asking the why question, why do I do this, why do I struggle with this, often only makes the problem worse. And the reason being is because of how we influence the unconscious portions of the brain. So, uncontrolled compulsive eating takes place in the much older portion of the brain that evolved millions of years ago, which is responsible for your survival. So let's call this your survival brain or your survival mind. The survival brain operates on associations. So for example, you know what it's like when you smell the smell of freshly cut grass and you immediately get an emotion triggered. Well, it's the same with binge eating. For binge eaters, they have conditioned into the survival portion of the brain that food equals a specific emotional response. So the language of the survival mind or the survival brain is emotions and associations. Now, the language of the conscious mind is logic, intellectualizing, logical thought, rationalizing. And so the biggest mistake that people make is that they try to use the language of the conscious mind to influence something that's happening in the survival mind or the survival brain. It's a completely different language. It's kind of like trying to speak a foreign language by speaking English very slowly and very loudly. It doesn't work, and everybody involved just gets pissed off. Well, that's kind of what happens with binge eaters, is that they think that they should be able to change the behavior with logic. And then when they fail to change their behavior with logic, they feel like a failure personally. They feel like they're flawed or broken. They feel helpless, which of course triggers an emotional response, which of course then in turn leads to these cravings came out of nowhere. And so trying to analyze your way out of the problem only makes binge eating worse. So the first thing to understand here is that you are not flawed or broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You've simply had your ladder up against the wrong wall. So binge eating fundamentally isn't a food issue. So we need to stop looking for solutions around food and nutrition and fitness, and also let go of trying to analyze or calculate or intellectualize your way out of a problem, which fundamentally is an emotional problem. And this also in turn drives binge eaters crazy because many of them have learnt to heavily rely on intelligence, on logic, on thought, which of course is a vital, very important, very powerful skill set. But we all know that when you're in a good mood, you tend to make good decisions. And when you're in a bad mood, you tend to make bad decisions. So which one do you think you should focus on first? The mood or the emotion, or intellectualizing the decision? So let's start letting go of all of this obsession around food and nutrition and trying to calculate our way out of our problems. And instead, it's time to dedicate yourself to emotional fitness and self-mastery.